So I think Japan has a problem today that can be solved with, new innovation, new ways of thinking about how to solve these security issues. And I think that's going to propel them into a global stage where they can actually command a global market share in cybersecurity if they really wanted to take charge of this area.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship. My name is Lum, your Web3 and Entrepreneurship host. Today, we are back in the entrepreneurship world. So for those of you who are new to the show, Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship is a show highlighting the journeys of builders and innovators in Web3 and entrepreneurship. Some topics, especially in Web3, may get technical, but we do our best to keep it accessible for most people. Here I am today. I'm joined by Eddy Almand. He's the founder and CEO of Almata. Eddy, can you give a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Lam. And my name is Eddy Almand, originally from the US and currently living and residing in Tokyo, Japan. Um, my background has primarily been in military and US government work in the areas of security and intelligence. And now I'm in the cybersecurity sector on the commercial side. So thanks for having me.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So I think many people would probably be interested in knowing more about like your past history or more your professional background, like what you did before you founding your company. If you could share with us, maybe feel free to pick a timeline when you think appropriate, maybe even in your undergraduate years or maybe after that or whatever point
Sure.
leading up until now, up until present day. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I went to a private aviation school. I was meant to be in aerospace engineering for a while, but it wasn't an area that I was really interested in as I was learning it. And so when I left school, I joined the U.S. military, and my job during the military was in the area of signals intelligence. And in that sector, I was an analyst, so an intelligence analyst, um, also a Russian linguist. So
Mm.
for the U.S. Army, I did signals intelligence as a Russian specialist. And I did that for about 5 years. And after I got out of the military, it was during the whole Iraq war. And one of my first jobs dealing with the US government was with a startup that built intelligence tools for intelligence analysts. So that's where I started to first get my experience in the startup world. Eventually, I crossed over into US government as a civilian and also working in intelligence, primarily in the areas of technology innovation and integration of new technologies within the government. So, how do we take legacy systems that the US government loves to hold on to, all the data that we collect and utilize as information and eventually as intelligence, and how do we take new technologies and try to build efficiencies around it? So that's what I did for most of my government side career until about 2016-ish.
Mm.
Started my U.S. company, moved to the Middle East, was working in Bahrain, and did some work around Dubai and Kuwait and Bahrain on cybersecurity consulting for industrial control systems in the finance sector. And eventually, as a half Japanese only child, my parents
Mm.
had moved to Japan, came out here through some contacts in the government. And it was during a time when Japan was going through a lot of changes. This is pre COVID. And they were doing a lot of talks about what some of your viewers may have heard it called Five Eyes, which is a classified network for five nations to share classified information on at a secret level that Japan was trying to be involved with. And since my background is in that area, I was working to do some consulting in that area. And through some contacts in Japan during that time, realized that there was a critical need for cybersecurity. And we'll
Mm.
dive a little bit deeper into what that areas are, but what those areas are. But um, I, as somebody who's an entrepreneur and who's looking to build something, you cling on to a challenge that you want to solve, something that you feel passionate about, and kind of drive forward. So that's where Almata, the Japanese company entity, was built out, and so that's where our journey begins in Japan.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think there's quite a lot of information to unpack from there. I think you said you first began as like an intelligent analyst, right? For like,
Right,
maybe, so what is so my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, intelligent analyst is that you gather a lot of information or intelligence, right? And then you just make a report or summarize and trying to find something like maybe strategic or something important, right? For the
right.
government. Is that
Yeah, I
correct?
mean,
Yeah.
if to get technical into that area or that space, you collect data,
Hmm.
and when you put multiple data together, it becomes information.
Hmm.
And when you analyze that information, make sense of it, it becomes intelligence.
I
And
see.
when you can reuse that intelligence, it becomes wisdom. So historical intelligence uh, analysis becomes something that you can um, go back to and leverage as the world changes. And so you can look at historical information and be able to assess, make predictions about what's about to happen in the future. And I think this really ties into cybersecurity as well, and the areas that we deal specifically in vulnerability management and vulnerabilities, primarily because we live in a world of um, unpredictability.
Hmm.
And so, and currently, as technology advances and evolves, and the types of data that we're collecting might not be the type of data we had access to in the past. All of this comes into play with how do we take that data, make sense of it, and then make new predictions about the future based on information that we may never had before. So I think, to me, that's a really intriguing challenge, and that's a really interesting part of doing the job that we do at Almata, and specifically in the cybersecurity area.
Interesting. And I know that for many people who work in the military, especially with US government, I guess a lot of it is like top secret information, right? That you probably cannot disclose. Yeah. But actually, I'm probably more curious about, can you explain or talk more about the Five Eyes thing? I don't think I'm familiar with it by
Yeah,
any chance.
okay. So there's different classified networks depending
Mm,
on what level of classification of data you're handling or
mm,
information that you're handling. And that's all based on sources and methods and tradecraft, right? And so when you look at what's called the Five Eyes, so the five countries that can share classified information at a secret level, that's okay for foreigners to see, is the US, Canada, UK, New Zealand, and Australia. So that means that everybody has to come to the table with the ability to protect information, classified information, at the same level that your government would do, protect that classified information. And once you build that trust, you can all operate on the same network to be able to share information across with each other that might be pertinent for national security in another country. So, if, for instance, the US got intelligence about something that was critical for Australia to know right away, we have the network to be able to communicate that information or that intelligence with them while still safeguarding sources and methods. So I think, if you, it's really about being able to protect information at a certain level and having that
mm.
trust with each other. And that's the Five Eyes countries that have built that trust with each other.
Interesting. Okay. So these five countries, they can share maybe, I don't know, confidential secret information with each other, and then somehow make sure that it's not going to be leaked outside to anybody.
That's correct.
Wow, I think that's, it must
I mean,
have gone to
that's
some. Yeah, I guess it must have gone to quite some lengths, to, because I guess if you talk one person to another, and then one spread to 10, and 10 spread to, I don't know, 100, and that's quite. I
Yeah, I
think.
mean, I think it's a relevant conversation today. I'm not trying to
Mm,
digress into something that's outside of cybersecurity, but
sure.
when you look at Japan, and traditionally, um, they don't really have a well, they do have somewhat of a um, information layer for classified level information according to their standards, but they don't really have a national security program um, that vets individuals on whether they can be trusted, whether they're Japanese citizens, and who their contacts are, as well as do they have a level of trust um, to be able to handle classified information without leaking it to the newspapers or to the press or to other areas. So I think Japan's going through this. It's come up in a lot of news recently that Japan's seeking to have a national security program. I think it's great. It's probably not going to happen overnight, but it's the right step forward. And I think the sooner they get to that level, the more they'll be able to see what's going on in the world. So hopefully that will have some drive to it. I know it was a big discussion point pre-COVID, and then Corona happened, and as you know, the world shut down, and
Yeah.
some of these things that had a lot of legs kind of went by the wayside, and everybody focused on um, you know coronavirus and such. So
Mm.
now that it's coming back into the press, I think it's a good step forward. I'm glad that it hasn't been lost by the wayside. So we shall see.
Interesting. When you say Japan have like a national security program, I guess would it be equivalent to like the National Security Administration in the US, something like that.
Uh, no, it's completely different. I
Mm.
don't know. National security program in the U.S. is there's a layer of
Mm.
intelligence agencies that operate within a program that allows the individuals with that level of classification to be vetted,
I see.
and it's pretty extensive, and it's pretty invasive. All of your history and everybody that you grew up with kind of get interrogated about your
Wow.
character and who you are as a person. So that scares a lot of people off, I think. But if that's the process by which we can vet people for whether or not we can trust them, um, it's certainly a baseline level that should be considered for building that trust on a network to be able to share classified information. So
Interesting. Yeah, I think I can see one quite big contrast to the Web3 world that I'm used to. In Web3, I would say is more like open source. Like a lot of information, even the code is like open source, and
all right.
but actually there's also a lot of people who is like anonymous by nature. There's
Mm-hmm.
many reasons why they choose to be anonymous as well in the Web3 world. But yeah. Anyway, I just saw that it's quite interesting. Actually, so I think you said afterward. You said you moved to Bahrain, right, to begin your company,
Yes.
2016. Well, I guess first question is like why Bahrain, and then what sort of company
Yeah.
did you build
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
kind I kind of glanced over that part. There was a lot of private things happening in my life.
Hmm.
I was married before, and my ex and I were at the time both government. So, in order to move to the Middle East, I resigned my post, and then in doing so, I had to do something. And actually, it
Hmm.
was really it's as we're talking about entrepreneurship, and I think we'll dive a little bit deeper into that journey. Um, you know, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a drive to innovate and do stuff, then sometimes being in the government is not the best environment to be able
Hmm.
to kind of make things happen really fast. And I think there was a lot of frustration there for me.
Hmm.
So I've always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to do something on my own.
Hmm.
And maybe it was just having an excuse to be able to do that gave me the next steps to go, okay, well, now I don't have a job. I just quit my job. So got to do something. And, spaghetti on the wall, either it sticks or it fails. So you just keep moving from that direction on.
I see. Cool. Cool. Yeah. And then so after Bahrain, and then yeah, from there you moved to Japan afterward, right? And then it's been few years already, right? Yeah, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's been close to 8 years since I moved here.
Okay.
I think my company's now on its seventh year,
Wow.
coming up on, no, sixth year.
Hmm.
maybe something like that. So
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like time's just flying by. You don't really
Yeah.
feel like you have enough time to get everything in.
Yeah.
So
I think you never have enough time as an entrepreneur. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, time management is one of the key skill, I would say. Yeah. So actually, before we deep dive in the company, just one like fun question. Can you share with us what you do for fun outside of work? What are your hobbies?
oh man, uh, do I have any hobbies outside of work? I dabble in DJing. I've been DJing for a long time
DJ,
now since
nice.
I was young, but it's really more of a hobby now than anything else.
Hmm,
Unlike before, it felt like it was more my thing. But yeah, I
nice.
mean, really, that's kind of the only time I have to enjoy, doing something outside of work
I
right
see.
now. Work is a
uh,
hobby, right?
yeah, it's true. I think for a lot of entrepreneur, correct. Yeah, it's like dedication. Yeah, yeah, hobby. What sort of music do you DJ? By the way, is it
DJing, I do like drum and bass,
okay?
you know, house, deep house, that type of stuff.
Nice.
But I love listening to everything from country music to been recently listening to J rap for some reason.
Japanese rap is
I
fun, right?
don't
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
fun.
even know any artists, but just
Yeah,
find
all
the
good.
channel.
I
So
mean,
it's
I
kind of cool.
can recommend one you right now. You can look up Miyachi. Miyachi is like he's a bilingual rapper. So actually, he's like
Oh, I think I've
Asian
heard of
American.
yeah.
Yeah, you probably
Yeah,
might have
yeah,
heard
yeah.
of him. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
actually
he has a YouTube
quite a fan.
channel, right?
He does. He
Yeah.
does like this Combini confession. It's actually really fun. I
Yeah,
probably
I
may leave
know.
a link
Yeah,
up
yeah.
here just for fun. Just for people, it's quite unexpected, but yeah. Combini confession where I just go around interview people for in both Japanese and English. Sometimes depend on the
Yeah, I've seen it.
audience,
I've
and
seen it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite fun. Exactly, but he's like a rapper. That's his main job. Yeah, he rap in both language like fluently, which is
Hmm.
extremely rare talent, I would say. Because I think speaking is already. I mean, it's of course it's very high cognitive level, but like rapping is like you really have to know the language deep down, at the
Yeah.
native
You
level.
should have
Yeah.
him. You should have him on your channel.
No, I
Talk
would
about
love to actually. To be
entrepreneurship.
honest, yeah, I would love to actually. I would love to have him on here. Maybe just do some rapping. Yeah, listen to him rap on here. That'd be fun actually. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Cool, cool. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and deep dive into your current company. I think maybe first, maybe it would be helpful if you could share a bit about history, right, and then of the origin of your company, and then afterward, feel free to share any presentation material or website
Okay.
of your company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't really have a presentation, so we'll go to
Hmm.
the website.
Okay.
But just a little background. So the company was established on Christmas of 2018. It was a uh, LLC, Japanese LLC, so Godo Gaisha before. We didn't. We started off as a services based company, so we were providing penetration tests, and that was like our main service was doing pen tests. It was an area that's kind of a big thing in the Middle East. I think in
Hmm.
Japan it was less less. I would say people know about penetration testing, but
Yeah.
it's difficult to sell in Japan because pen tests are very manual processes.
Hmm.
So if you could think about white hat hackers coming in, being given permission to purposely try and attempt to breach a website or a web application, and then take that and provide the client with the ways that you were able to go in and breach the site, as well as look at what information could have been exploited from that breach, and then how do you solve it? How do you help them fix those areas and then secure that site? Now, this is a very manual process. It's been traditionally a manual process. So, the type of security researchers that you have on staff that can help you do this, um, it really is not a one for one. So, it's hard to be consistent across the board. So, what you end up understanding is your researchers' areas of strength. And depending on the type of work that is being asked to do, you can be a little bit more selective of the type of researcher that you bring onto the project and provide that service for your clients. For us, where we were able to make a little bit more headway in the area of penetration testing, So a lot of the pen testers that are freelancers that do this from outside of Japan usually only provide their reports in English, right? And
Mm.
so this was a problem that we noticed in Japan. So we provided the reports in both English and Japanese to our clients. And I think that got us a lot more clientele for, we weren't price gouging or anything like that. We were just providing this service at the best pricing that we can offer, and then
Mm.
providing the reports in both English and Japanese so that their Japanese engineers could understand what was found, and then as well as the English speaking staff, whether they are here in Japan or elsewhere, can also see the same level of reporting and work on solving those solutions problems together. So that was an area that we started off with, but along the way, it was some of it was too expensive for our clients, so we started offering vulnerability scanning, and also as so here's the penetration testing
Yeah.
aspect of it, and then the area that I think you wanted to discuss a little bit about was the Web3 security. So when we say Web3 security, the work that we were doing primarily was in code review. So we were looking at smart contracts
Mm.
and looking for signs of security issues within the contract code. So like double minting
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um,
So were you actually providing this Web3 security for Web3 companies, or was it for Web2 company, like just building Web3 products?
so yeah, that's a really good question.
Mm.
We were actually providing Web3 security for Web2 companies, and
Mm.
I can't name the companies, but
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
um, big conglomerate types that
Yeah.
were getting into NFTs, so like NFT galleries, that type of work we've done, as well as other areas also actually within NFTs. So most of that was, Ethereum based smart contract reviews, which is quite interesting. But there's not a lot of work in services for this type of stuff because you have to spend a lot of effort to try and acquire clients. And like I said before, everything is
Yeah.
manual based, which is the reason why you start to think about as an entrepreneur. And there's nothing wrong with services,
Yeah.
but I think you should, as a small company, you have to always think about scaling. Like, how do you scale, even if it's a services based company? How do you create a system that allows you to scale your services, to be able to achieve, providing these services with efficiency to a client? So when you start to think about stuff like that, you start to think, okay, well, um, the only way I think, or the most currently efficient way of doing it, is to rely heavily on technology. So if you have technology to allow you to automate a lot of the non-automatable areas, well, that doesn't make sense. Automate the areas that are very manual,
Mm.
then you can achieve a certain amount of scalability within the services. Um, but right about the time we were doing this, and actually, so our company started at the end of 2018, and as you know, 2019 was the start of COVID.
Yeah.
So we immediately almost got hit hard with um, going pretty flatline.
Mm.
So we weren't, people weren't going out and doing business face to face as much.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of issues there. So um, that's one aspect of it. And then the other part, the reason why we went into more of a product company, is that when you look at the Japanese government, for instance, if I wanted to do business with the government, it's difficult for me to provide services to the Japanese government as a non-Japanese citizen.
Oh, really?
But
Oh.
but it's but they'll buy foreign products
Mm.
to use, right? So for
Yeah.
and not that we have business with the government, but if we wanted to do business with the Japanese government in the future, we have to think, how do we cross that line? And is it worth it for us to keep pushing the services end of things? So we made a conscious decision to start building a product and developing a product that would allow us to scale and be able to provide maybe a solution to the government in the future. And so that's kind of the direction that we took during COVID. So we took advantage of the fact that there wasn't a lot of services-based business, and we focused on software development at the time.
I see.
And
so would you say that before like COVID, were you maybe like your company going out meeting clients in person? Is that why like COVID had an impact in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me specifically, I think it's really interesting to kind of compare like the United States, startup environment versus the Middle East startup environment versus Asia startup environment, specifically Japan, which is a whole different animal, I think, compared to other Asian nations when it comes to the startup ecosystem. You're seeing a lot of movement now in Japan, but I think it took a while to get there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how it evolves into the future. But it's a really good question, primarily because when you think about Japan has such a heavy influence on culture and keeping things status quo and being very risk averse. And I believe that you put all of those things together and you come up with a way that it works for everyone. And so, yeah. And that's why we started developing our product-based platform. And it's in the area of vulnerability management. When you think about cybersecurity, it's such a broad-based field, and there's so many different things that you could do within cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So our strategy and our thought was if our company is a Japanese company and we want to service or provide a product for domestic clients, outside of training and awareness for security or cybersecurity, in the technology aspect, what's the basics of cybersecurity? And it's patching, updating, understanding the vulnerability environment. And when you look at IT and security specialists in this area, the most mundane aspect of doing IT work is in the area of patching and maintaining systems, which is the reason why I think it's really ripe for having a product that can automate a lot of the mundane tasks, right? So that's one of our focus areas. And when we look at vulnerability management, we think of it as like the seatbelt to a car. For ages, cars didn't have seatbelts in them until they started becoming faster and more dangerous. And then now, seatbelts are required for most vehicles around the world. And when you think about cybersecurity evolving at a rate that's difficult to maintain, and you think, it's been around for ages, right? Ever since the internet days, and even before, when they were doing other types of hacking with analog systems. I think it's evolved to a level that just doing basic hygiene should be automated. It should just be common sense. You shouldn't have to pay somebody, an hourly wage just to maintain systems. If you have a system or a product that you can trust to automate a lot of those tasks. So when you think about it, 70% of companies in Japan are on legacy systems with a very limited skilled staff. I mean, not that they don't know what they're doing. It's just that there's not a lot of resources to be able to keep up with the operations. And if you have legacy systems, one of the biggest things you're worried about is you've built an enterprise over all these years, and you've come to rely heavily on this enterprise and network that have interdependencies with other systems and is critical to your business operations. So how do you update things or keep them safe in a way that doesn't break operational or disrupt operations is one area of challenge. And as well as how do you maintain an understanding of what's being updated. And when it comes to vulnerability, I think one of the critical things about it is that, unless it's a 0 day, you have to know it exists in order to be able to say it's a problem for something, right? So if you
Yeah. For
can, yeah.
one second. For those who may not be familiar with the term 0 day, can you explain what it means?
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
think
So
yeah.
a 0 day is a vulnerability that hasn't been made public yet.
Mm,
So it's an exploitation that somebody may have found to be able to use in a cyber attack. And as soon as they use it, people know it exists. So the fact that they haven't used it and are sitting on it is a 0 day. It's basically a vulnerability that is unknown
I see.
at the moment, right? So
Yeah.
once, I mean, I guess you can use a 0 day. If it doesn't get discovered, then it's still a 0 day. But most of the time, they try not to use these unless it's, you know, something that they're going to cause really big disruptions with. Um, but being able to, look at the environment and understand new technologies that's coming out, can we get to a prediction accuracy to understand where um, threat actors might be focusing their efforts on finding exploitations, and so finding 0 days. And I think the answer for us is I think we can do a lot better job than what we're doing today to be able to do that. So that's one of the challenges that we're also looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense. So would you say that for a lot of these big corporations then, because I guess the bigger company get, right, the more moving parts say, and then I guess you'll need like a maybe tiny little hole, right? You there to be able to, from a
yeah,
hacker perspective, right, to penetrate into the system, and
yeah.
so yeah.
I mean, there's all these notable sayings that you hear. Like it's not if you're going to get hacked, it's um, you know whether or not you're going to get hacked or not, but when you will get hacked. So
Mm,
the idea that you'll eventually come under some type of attack at some point is the status quo nowadays, right?
yeah.
The other thing, it's just you have to protect yourself constantly, and there's different schools of thought about this, right? I mean, are you always going to protect your castle, and then if you protect your castle so much, you hinder the business interactions of taking
Yeah.
advantage of a free and open network to be able to conduct commerce or business in. And so, how much risk are you willing to um, have in order to be able to do this type of business? And if you open yourself up too much and have a lot of security flaws, then you're going to be an easy target to be attacked. And if you close yourself up too much, you're not going to be able to do business at all. So
Mm,
I don't prescribe to this idea of zero risk. I think there's
mm,
always an inherent risk, and sometimes that analysis that you have to do is if I don't patch my systems, what is the likelihood and the impact that I'm going to get hacked because I didn't patch the system? Or if I patch the system and break other things, what's the impact of business when I could have just gone unsecured? Uh, so there's that balancing act, I think, with a lot of companies, and that's one area. And then we rely heavily on various databases that show us vulnerabilities that exist, and these databases provide us with values of what that impact is going to be, or whether it's a critical vulnerability, meaning it's rated at a high level that you should immediately take care of it. But if your network or your system's configured in a way that is secure, then maybe that vulnerability is not a critical vulnerability for your enterprise or your environment. Then we should have systems that are smart enough to be able to analyze the configurations environment as well as the impact of the vulnerability to see if we even need to put effort into to patching it or updating the systems. So I think even though this is a very mundane and the very unsexy part of cybersecurity is vulnerabilities,
Yeah,
I think it's the very basics, and it's an area that has a lot of challenges that I think we could do better solving.
that's true. Yeah, I think it completely agree, and I do know that as company grow bigger, right? Obviously, they will have more suppliers and more contractors and more software. Basically, more software mean more
Yeah.
vendors. More vendors mean like more libraries and more packages, more tools used, and then of course that open up to like more areas of attack. And yeah, so basically, would you say like this your main product at Eagle provide like a
Yeah.
360-degree? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to
Mm,
talk a little bit about our product, Eagle, and
mm,
we're going through a lot of changes. I mean, we just came out with our release this month, and we've got some traction from some large, a fairly large company. So we're really excited to kind of work with these Japanese companies who really understand and have a need for something like this, or understand why it's important for their environment. And it's not a perfect solution just yet, but through these engagements with various users, we hope to get the necessary feedback to be able to fine tune our product into something that creates value for our clients. So just to take an opportunity to kind of pitch our products, we have what we call Eagle Talon, and then another one called Eagle Eye. So the Eagle Talon, this really comes back to your earlier suggestion, or the discussion about companies, even if they have a small hole, they can be attacked, or have a threat actor come in and breach their systems. So the idea behind Eagle Talon is to be able to secure supply chain. That's one
mm,
use case.
I see.
The other use case would be for a cyber insurance type of vertical to be able to identify cyber risk within their client base who might be, on a cybersecurity insurance policy. Uh, I think traditionally, when you look at the insurance environment, they were requiring their clients to have certain certifications and standards met. And those all actually cost a lot of money for small to medium sized businesses, which is your
Mm,
biggest market, I think, when it comes to cyber insurance. Because specifically to Japan, 99.7% of the companies are small to medium sized businesses. And of those, just over
yeah.
60% are part of a supply chain network. And I mean, we all know the Toyota hack that has occurred in the last couple of years, and the Nagoya port and the Osaka hospital. You know, it's not like somebody goes out there and says, "I want to attack Toyota, so I'm just going to go straight into the Toyota network." Um, when you're doing reconnaissance, you start evaluating all of the touch points with smaller companies who may not have the budget to secure. When we look at like the Colonial Pipeline hack that occurred in the United States, that downed, I think, the gasoline supply chain for over 2 weeks in the east coast of America.
Wow.
That was partly a supply chain attack that downed the accounting system. So, because they didn't have an accounting system to see who's paid what for gasoline, they weren't able to make deliveries to customers. That was all on an automated accounting system. So, I mean, none of these things are like very complicated, right? I mean, when you
Mm,
think about it, I mean,
yeah.
the skills necessary to be able to pull off something like that, I'm sure is quite extensive, and it sounds like an extensive operation. But just to think how simple it could be to find a company that doesn't have enough resources to secure their network, which is tied into your accounting system, and that's what causes a large conglomerate to go down, affecting millions of people,
I
or
see.
even in some cases GDPs for
Yeah.
for countries, which would cross over into national security. Um, I think one of the most overlooked areas is supply chain. So if small to medium-sized businesses are required to be a part of your operations, then who's going to pay for the security that's required? Because
Yeah.
you're using these SMEs to be able to minimize costs and to give somebody an opportunity to operate. But do you make them compliant at a certain level? And if they do become compliant, then it's going to cost them more to become compliant. And so I think all of that feeds into how the economies have to change, and how we're going to, create protections around um, the ecosystem, whether it's SMEs or large enterprises.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
but just having enough money to be able to pay for a very complex system that requires other skills to be able to operate it is not a solution that I think most SMEs want nor
Yeah.
can afford. And so we're offering Eagle as that solution to be able to keep costs down, a SaaS-based agentless product that allows companies to be able to manage supply chain, to be able to manage, security and software, whether it's domains or IPs, and kind of provide that solution. Sorry for the long-winded explanation, but that's Eagle Talon, and then I'll keep it short on the other one. Eagle Eye is more of a lightweight version of Eagle Talon, and it allows companies to be able to assess their cyber risk and monitor their cyber risk. So their domains that are out there, any IPs that they have exposed, um, based off of all of those things, we look at the vulnerabilities that are associated with the tech stack that is behind those domains, and then we offer them a risk score based off of that. And then I guess the other part that I didn't mention as well is both systems provide a step-by-step remediation process that's AI based. And so I think we're getting better at providing a more accurate remediation support, but I think it could be better for sure. So these are just some areas that we think are really exciting in the area of vulnerability management, and how we can leverage AI and automation, and how we can kind of take the mundane tasks out of the day-to-day IT specialists and kind of put more of those tasks on the system itself.
Cool. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Actually, so I think I'm curious about, you mentioned about before, like cyber insurance. Like who? I guess like why? What type of company would buy cyber insurance, and what sort of thing does a cyber insurance protect again?
Yeah, and I'm not. Yeah,
Hmm.
don't get me wrong. I think it's a fascinating area. It's definitely not my strong suit, and this is an area that we're just starting to dabble in, primarily because we've been, one of the other areas that might be of interest to other entrepreneurs is how do you get market validation, and
Yeah.
especially in an area that we're not familiar in, which is a vertical in the insurance industry.
Hmm.
Um, it was really by chance. One of our investors early on, not early on, it was actually last year,
Hmm.
kind of brought it up and said, you know, having a product that's too specialized in one area might not be the way to go. Um, this is a solution that's very similar to what you have. You could probably create a more lightweight version of it, and it would be a separate product. Um, and so we kind of took that step in that direction. And European insurance companies and U.S. Companies are using this type of technology to be able to assess whether or not a client is within an acceptable parameter for, um, when they're vetted for whether or not the insurance company would give them a policy or not. And also, I think it's also used in determining how much they're going to charge that client,
I
right?
see.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't claim to know this area of business, but we've been in a couple of engaging discussions with cyber insurance companies and cyber insurance like think tanks.
Hmm.
And I don't know if they were assessing whether or not we have a competitive product, but they all have, not. an identical product, but they all have a similar product that they leverage for being able to assess their clients' cyber risk. So I think it's an interesting area that we could probably move into
Yeah.
and work on, but it's still very very early for us on that. So
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I'm curious about, I guess, for the company that buy the cyber insurance, right? Do you think they could be a good potential clients for your company because if they're already buying it,
I would
there's a need for
like
service.
to, yeah. I mean, I the business model for me, the way I think would work better for us is to partner with a insurance company.
Hmm.
And then the
Yeah.
insurance company would offer the insurance policy, but they would require their clients to be monitored for cyber risk.
Ah.
And then the insurance company would have visibility into whether or not their clients are going above a expected threshold for risk. And if they can maintain a lower cyber risk, well, number one, they're being able to see the smaller companies are being able to be educated on their cyber risk profile, which I think is a really good thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Awareness and training
For
is
sure.
all
Yeah.
part of it. But also to start to understand what that acceptable risk is. Because like I said earlier, I don't think there's such a thing as a zero risk.
Yeah.
But if you can maintain under 10%, under 15%, whatever that
Hmm.
number is, that's acceptable to the insurance industry, then you would be able to say, okay, it's like having a credit score for in the United States,
Yeah.
um, that you have a level of trust in being able to manage risk in the uh, cyber realm. So I think all of that is in a good space.
I see. Yeah, I think that totally makes sense what you said. I think that will be even a better, like I guess, business partnership type of opportunity there for your company, right? Because if yeah, if they require, if the cyber insurance company require I guess the clients to have a stronger security, which means they would need some sort of a security tool, right? And then your company would come in and help them. So I think it's a win-win-win for everyone there, right? In the
Yeah,
end,
I
fighting
think I
against
think so
cybercrime.
too.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think and it really, I mean, we're a small company.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people who think that that's at a disadvantage, but you know, understanding coming from the United States, you really see that innovation really starts with the small companies.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's, Japan's slowly starting to come around from
Yeah.
that stereotype on smaller companies in Japan, but they have a heavy reliance on big conglomerates to provide IT and IT operations, and I don't necessarily think that that's a good way of moving forward um, for Japan. I think they should really tap into the innovation and the ecosystem for startups, specifically in the tech sector, and how do you integrate a lot of that innovation into your operations, I think is a smarter way of kind of developing an ecosystem that's a win-win for everybody. And I think there's enough space and enough money for that to happen. So I'm hopeful for that. But I know change is slow. So I think we're getting there, and we just need to kind of stay positive and move forward and not give up on the innovation aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure that it will take time, especially for a country with a very strong culture like Japan, right? A lot of the corporate culture is probably very much like resistant to change and innovation or like new things, right? Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it will take time, but I think yeah,
Yeah,
like you said, Japan is coming around with the idea. Like now, I feel many younger people and also people are now realizing that it's not like lifelong employment is probably not the way to go. And also more and more people are now working for startups, right? Building exciting things, especially in AI, in robotics, so many different areas actually. Yeah,
yeah.
fascinating. Cool. I think it's, maybe it would be interesting to maybe can you share a bit about like your company? How many people work in your company and what do most people do? Yeah.
Yeah, so our Japanese group, there's four of us in
Hmm.
Japan.
Okay.
We leverage a lot of freelancers around the world.
I see.
So that's kind of been our business model. Now, we're currently fundraising for seed this year.
Mm.
So, and we're really close. We're in talks with several investors right now, and we're really positive and optimistic that that's going to come through. And we've got a strategy to build out a team here in Japan and be more fully focused on the Japanese. It's it's tough as an entrepreneur in Japan to kind of think that Japan is the only market that you're going after. So I think, we always have this idea that we want to be more global. And so I think we're going to put a lot more effort into how do we diversify our staff here in Japan. And, you often hear that Japan's always behind the power curve as far as cybersecurity goes. But I think it's a really big opportunity for Japan to really adopt and take charge of this area and to become like a global leader on cybersecurity. I think, when you look at US and Israel as being like the
Yeah.
specialty where the knowledge base is, they've been solving this problem for 20 plus years. They started off solving a problem that was 20 years old and solving it with a solution that's 20 years old. And over time, they've evolved and the business has grown. And I don't think the price has really come down. I think it's actually gone up, the enterprise
Mm.
software for these things. But I think Japan is special in that they haven't really noticed that they had a problem. Or if they do, they don't make it really known. So I think Japan has a problem today that can be solved with new innovation, new ways of thinking about how to solve these security issues. And I think that's going to propel them into a global stage where they can actually command a global market share in cybersecurity if they really wanted to take charge of this area. Because up until now, they really haven't thought of security as an issue for them. But I think, things are changing around the world, geopolitics and everything. And I think they're slowly starting to come to realize that given the limited skill set and, the cost that of security and the dependency on supply chain and networks and interdependencies, um, really, if they're going to scale defenses, they really have to lean into the technology aspect. So technology to me is the part that's going to allow Japan to maintain a sense of posture that's in security compared to other nations that have skills and a lot of people to be able to do that work. Um, so for Japan, it's going to be critical in the coming years. So we're hopeful for that, and we're taking every opportunity to try and position ourselves in that market.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope so too. And I think, I mean, even the government of Japan is also really trying to, I think they also realize that after what, like 2 or 3 decades of what's the word, like stagflation, right? Where the economy, I think Japan used to have like the golden decade, and then followed by the lost decades, right?
Yeah,
And
the
for
last
like
decade. Yeah,
20 or 30 years, decades, right? And then
yeah,
yeah, now they're really trying to bring it back. And I think tech is probably going to be the way, whether it's Web3, AI, or
yeah.
cyber intelligence. I'm not
Seriously,
sure which one it is, but yeah, I think they're really trying, putting a lot of focus on that. Yeah, so let's
I
see. I
agree.
think in the future.
I agree, and I think there's going to be some changes specifically to how government contracts are let. Like, for example, the United States government puts out contracts, and they don't want to take the risk of hiring a small company that might bankrupt
Yeah,
next year, right?
yeah,
So they'll put
yep,
out tens of millions of dollars on a contract, and they'll say, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, whatever the big conglomerates are, you have to spend a percentage of this contract money on supporting small businesses with innovation. We want you to manage the
yeah,
project, but it's up to you to be able to find smaller companies to bring in innovation for the type of solutions that we're seeking. I think it's a really, really good way of doing business. And I think Japan could probably, uh, I don't know if there's any challenges in adopting those similar methods, but I think it could, allow a lot of Japanese innovation to be brought into a large scale government type contract to come up with solutions. So and instead of just solely relying on a big company to just come up with those solutions.
Mm.
um, I think there's ways, there's a lot of things that can be fixed, but it's those challenges that are kind of great, because they're also opportunities. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I think so too. So what do you say are like the main hurdles or main challenges facing your company with being so lean and nimble?
well, number one, I think my language. I feel like I'm fluent, but having to be able to um, uh, explain my position in a very
Mm,
technically and technical speak.
yes.
I need to do better in those areas. Yeah, and I have great people around me,
Mm,
so I think that really helps out so much. I have Ishida-san on my team and Kameta-san on my team, and they've been great. They're young, they're driven, they're all
yeah,
hustlers, and
that's
so
awesome.
trying to find people like that in Japan who you can surround yourself with, I think is really really critical and key to having being a foreigner and doing a startup in Japan. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And just being culturally sensitive, but yet not losing this drive, this attitude that you can come up with something great and be able to put that out in the market, and just being able to show value to your clients, um, while still being humble and understanding that sometimes your solution or something that you're doing could show how badly they've been doing things, and that might not be the best way to approach potential clients. So I'm still learning. I'm learning every day. I'm an old guy now, but I think being blessed with still having the ability to learn every day and understand new things and being so close to people is it's been a blessing. So
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, I mean, even for me living in Japan for such a long time, I think even presenting anything technical in Japanese still quite somewhat of a challenge for me too. I think it takes a lot of practice, right? And
yeah,
yeah, it's just a lot of practice, right? Because sometimes, I mean, there's some words that you don't use on a daily basis, right, in Japanese, and then suddenly, if you're required to do a business presentation on like on a technical topic, whether it's cybersecurity, Web3, crypto, blockchain, whatever it may be, right? Yeah, it certainly requires a lot. Like for example, even some words in Web3 I kind of make sense for people in the industry. Like for example, DAO, right? How would I explain a DAO to someone who have no idea what a DAO is, right? Yeah, so you have to, and then try to explain that in Japanese. Right? That's like another level of complexity. So I totally understand your pain as well, trying to explain what cybersecurity term like 0 day to someone who have maybe little or no technical background in Japanese. Yeah, that can be a challenge. I see that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Cool, cool. So then, I mean, being a new startup here in well, maybe not so new anymore, but who do you say are like your main competitors in this area then? Who are you
Mm,
competing against in this market?
yeah, I mean that's a
Mm,
there's a couple.
mm,
Well, I say a couple, but I really mean there's several.
mm,
Um, when you say competitors, there are several uh, big cybersecurity companies that have like a one-stop shop that have
I see.
all the cybersecurity tools, and so we might be a competitor to one of their suite of tools that they provide. Um, so that I still consider them competitors.
Okay.
And then there's a few domestic companies that I would consider competitors. I think what sets us apart and what our unique value proposition is are in the areas of AI and
Mm,
how we approach the problem set. So we used, when I was working for the startup in providing the intelligence analytical tool for the U.S. government, we used to have a saying, um, "Built for analysts by analysts." So
mm,
um, I try to take on that kind of motto, I guess, to say, we might not be building it from a technical standpoint. We're trying to look at it from a hacker standpoint. from a threat actor standpoint, how do threat actors target companies? How do threat actors recon targets to be able to identify vulnerabilities? How do they do that? And what is their thought process? And then kind of reverse engineering it and identifying a solution that covers that ground. Because I think when you look at it from a purely technical standpoint, you start to um, uh, be tunnel visioned a little bit. You
Mm.
get blind spots. So, and the reason why this is really a different way for us to think is because the way that threat actors operate in their MO is also changing constantly, right? They're not
Mm.
doing the
Yeah.
same way of figuring out how to attack. They're always constantly coming up with new ways of exploiting systems, of tricking people into clicking on a phishing email or something of that nature. So how do we stay, um, sort of open-minded to the fact that the world is changing, the threat environment's changing, the actors are changing, and having such a rigid system doesn't kind of play into our future because it won't take us long before we're obsolete because it just takes one way of doing things different and then our solution doesn't work anymore. So I think you have to have a different mindset when it comes to security, especially for security, is to always think from an outside perspective.
Mm. That's true. Yeah, I think probably try to put yourself in like the shoes of the hacker, right? And then
Right,
that's probably one
exactly.
of the way. Yeah, how would
Yeah.
they attack this? This supply chain, for example, and then yeah, and then I think you mentioned using artificial intelligence. So I think we both know that AI is actually very hot or very much in in the topics, various different topic this year. Would you consider AI like would be one of your main comparative advantage then,
Yeah, I
compared to
think,
your competitors?
I'm very, very
Mm.
interested in the area of AI and how we can leverage AI to be able to do these things. There's a lot of challenges with AI as well. I think there's enough out there right now to be able to build a business and be profitable, right? With the capabilities that are out there. But that's
Yeah.
not to say that we shouldn't constantly look for new capabilities and new ways of doing, leveraging AI for the future. And I think that's where you and I had met was when I was giving that talk on that is, you know, one of the areas that is really intriguing to me is this idea that your models can be dynamic and the models can change over time based on the
Yeah.
type of data that's coming in is a really, really interesting concept to me because I think it mimics the way we think of the world. It mimics the way the world changes. It's somewhat fluid. I think the challenge there is that you have to rely on data that you can trust that is not, poison in some way that's going to
Yeah.
change the model in a way that's going to deceive you. But also, it's really intriguing because, as I discussed earlier, you don't know what new types of data are going to be involved. And sometimes it's not going to be historically, you can't rely solely on historical data that's obsolete. So I think you need to look at trends and the way things have evolved over time. I think that's a data point that should be captured. But, if new type of systems provide new logs and other things that can be leveraged to be able to identify okay, this model changes and so now this prediction changes as well, and then the output comes out, I think is a really cool area, and we're spending a lot of time in that sense. But I mean, I think also the negatives of that is that when you rely solely on those models and you don't know how those models are spitting out those answers, it's a black box, and you can't build trust on a black box. So you always have to have some type of method of understanding how that output gave you that output. I think being blind to that, I think, is a really hard step for most people to build trust with an automated system. So maybe that'll change in the future, but it still is an intriguing area of science that I think should be investigated further. I think there's a lot of applicability. if you could solve this, you could solve a lot of, intelligence questions. You can solve a lot
Yeah,
of, security questions. If somebody solved this problem with an AI, there's so many applications to this in the world, Um, so yeah, it's really exciting. I
absolutely.
just
Yeah, I
can't wrap
think
my head around this.
no, I totally understand. I think this is actually one like a very niche area that not many people are probably aware. It's like called explainable artificial intelligence, right? Or XAI, as some people call it. Yeah, I only know maybe one or two company in the world that actually have this explainable AI. I think the rest is like, of course, using AI, but just accept it as a black box, right? I think that's what
Right.
most of the whole world is
I
like
mean,
kind of
it's
using it. Yeah.
hmm,
So yeah, it's a, like I said, a very much under very niche area. But I think yeah, the one or two company I know that will probably once they make it big and release it to the whole world, we'll see some very interesting new discovery as well coming with that.
mhm.
Uh, anyway, so looking forward in the future, then curious about the future. How will like cybersecurity evolve in the next few years? Uh,
That's a tough question. I mean, uh, it really, to answer this question, I think
mm,
I see it more from how is the world changing? How, to also include, politics, like who's going to be the next president of the United States? How is that going to affect,
mm,
who are going to be targeted in the future and what kind of industries are going to be targeted and which countries are going to be nation state actors that are going to be targeting other nations and where alliances. So I think it all is fluid right now, especially during this election cycle, and then with Japan going through its elections and how everything's dynamic right now. Um, I think that's one area, right? That's one variable. I also think technology innovation and how fast new technology is adopted um, is also a factor, right? Because as new things come out, people are going to try to find ways to exploit it and game the system, and so that's a really intriguing area. Even I would go as far as like Web3, the adoption of Web3 and how it becomes a fabric of our infrastructure, whether we put our monetary systems on it and solely focus on the digital economy. Um, and can we trust that infrastructure? I think people are going to start looking at ways. They've always been doing that, but as that technology advances and evolves, I think there'll be new exploitable areas in that sense. Um, yeah, so I think it's such a tough question, that one, because it involves so many variables and factors. Um, but one thing won't change, I don't think, is the fact that people will always try to find um, ways to um, exploit systems, infrastructures, networks. Um, whether they're motivated by money or through corporate espionage, or to gain
mm,
knowledge and information, or even to breach data so that they have access to everybody's personal life. Um, all of those factors are motivations for different reasons for different actors, and I don't think that will go away anytime soon. I think actually it'll get worse over time.
yeah, I concur with your view on that. I think so. In Web3 in general, it's like if there's a lot of economic incentive, right, to be the bad actor, and then of course you try to. There's something called like there's like a cost of attack, right, for a certain like
Yeah, yeah,
blockchain network,
exactly.
right? Yeah. So if the
Right.
economic incentive is larger than the cost of attack, then obviously you're gonna see more and more of the actor trying to attempt it, right? As long as there's like benefit to be exploited from that, and like you said, so like I think that yeah, there's a lot of factors that will impact on how cybersecurity evolve in the next few years. So I guess bring me to one maybe relevant question here for the small and medium enterprise. I'm more curious on that side, because I feel like big corporation, they probably have their own IT or cybersecurity department already. But like, how can like small and medium enterprises fight cybercrime or just protect themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Effectively.
yeah, no, it's a good question, and um, I know everybody's probably heard it before, but awareness goes a long way. Um, making sure that everybody in your company, whether it's 5 people or 50 people or 100 people, even all get the proper training in cyber, because humans are the weakest link, and social engineering is a real thing. And I think that's probably the area that gets the most breaches is, either
Yeah.
somebody makes a call and
Mm.
builds trust with somebody and gets, information to access systems, or, you know, um, uh, inadvertently, like you click on a link and it takes you to a site that, steals credentials. All of those things can be avoided with some training, and I don't think it's expensive
That's
to do
true.
training. It's probably the basics of it. And then if you're a technology heavy company, come and check out our vulnerability management system. Little plug. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's it all starts with awareness, and then once you realize that, oh, this is a real problem, how do you protect from it? Um, but I think it also depends on the type of company you are. If you're
Yeah.
a mom and pop, vegetable stand in Japan, then
Therefore, they don't
maybe
need to care.
maybe your point of sale needs to be protected. But yeah,
Yeah,
so it
that's true.
really depends. It depends on your business model. It depends on the technology you are heavily dependent on, and it's dependent on the people.
Mm. Completely agree. And I think, yeah, like you said, I believe that's probably one of the weakest link. It's just a human, right? So when I used to work for like a fintech startup, one of the common like I guess like phishing email, or was just like a fake email, right? It wasn't fake email, like some random guy who wasn't even like the company email. You can actually see it because it come from like Hotmail or Gmail, and then saying like,
Yeah.
"Hey, Lum, this is the CEO. Can you call me right now?" Or like, can you? I'm like, "Oh, come on, man. You think I'm that stupid?" Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So
So
you got
actually,
spearfished.
yeah, exactly. I don't know what's the
Wow.
technical term for it, but yeah, but it just came to my inbox, right? And then in my like work email, and then but of course
Mm.
I knew this is a scam. I also confirmed with like the actual CEO too, and he said like, no, I didn't send out an email, yeah, to you, and then yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. It happened to me
mm.
last year too.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. They
Did
actually knew
mm.
enough to construct a pretty interesting email.
Wow,
Yeah. So, and then, it was almost like that. They use your name and they know who you
yeah,
are and some personal information about you.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
I
So,
think so too.
got
Yeah,
to
it's
be
quite
careful. Got to be
scary.
careful.
Yeah, yeah. But I know most of my info was like kind of public, so I guess that's why they can probably find it. Yeah. Anyway, just two more questions here from my side. I guess one is that
Okay.
do you have any advice for people who want to build their own technology company or startup in Japan or maybe anywhere?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, this is like my own personal journey, and I think about these areas a
Mm,
lot, and I read a lot about this stuff. But I think just never giving up hope, never giving up like on your idea, um, always trying to push through all the challenges, because those challenges that sometimes make you feel like you're getting beat up are really part of the journey that makes up for this, right? So if you're an entrepreneur out there and you feel like you're getting beat up, I would say don't give up. Believe in your passion, believe in what your product is, know that you have a good product or good service, and should be rewarded for that. So
I see. Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah, keep fighting and keep building. Yeah, keep the heads down. I do think it's like it's like a marathon, right? Building a tech company is like marathon. I mean, you've been doing it what for like 7 years, right? You said, yeah. So it's certainly not like something you can just try it for a month and then give up. Yeah, you do need to have the
yeah.
drive and persistence for the long run. Cool. And final question: where can people follow you? Feel free to share any
Oh yeah.
public handle, username, or
Yeah,
website.
I'll give you my link to LinkedIn. That's
Okay.
probably the best place to kind of link up with me.
Okay.
And then I always try to message back people. So feel free to message me if you had any interest in the information that was put out there today, and or you have areas that you think I need to uh, get corrected on. I'm all ears. I'm always open to learning and finding new ways of doing things. So please.
Awesome. Sure. Yeah, I'll make sure to put your LinkedIn and maybe your website also. Yeah, in the
Sure.
show
Yeah.
notes here. Yeah, and your website down in the show notes here, so that people can follow along and get in touch. Maybe they will get in touch for some business opportunity as well. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, Eddy, thank you so much for joining the show today. It's been very enlightening for me to learn more about like cybersecurity, building a startup in Japan, and what are some of the effective way for people, for us to fight against cybersecurity. So thank you for your knowledge and insight on this area, and good luck with
Thank
your
you, Lam.
company.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to come on your show. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you. And we're back to my studio. What do you guys think about this episode with Eddy, founder and CEO of Almata? I think in cybersecurity for SME, I think training and education can help a lot. And if there's one thing I can learn from my chat with Eddy, it is that for countries, cybersecurity could be a big comparative advantage for national growth, like the Five Eyes Intelligent Alliance that he mentioned about. For the next episode, I'll be talking to Chris Chabot, he's the VP of Developer Relation at Shadium. Shadium is the world's first EVM-based layer 1 blockchain, which uses dynamic state sharding to increase its transaction per second with the addition of every new node. The blockchain offers low gas fees forever while maintaining true decentralization and solid security. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.